In the opening scene of the movie, we see an Israeli army van carrying a Palestinian woman named Layal. She is a young schoolteacher who is arrested under the accusation of helping an anti-Israel terrorist group. The van stops in front of a prison, and the soldiers take her inside. She is then put in an interrogation room with her hands tied. A senior Israeli army officer enters the room to start the interrogation. He tries to force her into admitting having a connection to a terrorist group and harasses her. He repeatedly asks her which terrorist group she is associated with, but Layal sticks to her answer of denying any involvement with terrorist groups. After a harsh interrogation session, the officer is unable to extract any information from her. After the interrogation session, she is transferred to a women's jail by some lady officers. She is put through a checkup and given a uniform to wear. She is then directed to a cell where some other female prisoners are kept. The prisoners inside her cell are all Israeli and are in for white substance abuse. The Israeli women intimidate her, and she spends the first night in prison in fear. The next morning, she is called to meet the jailer. The jailer tries to convince her to admit her association with the terrorist groups. She promises Layal to reduce her sentence if she shows cooperation, but Layal sticks to her previous answer and denies having any connection with the terrorists. Later, Layal's husband Farid visits her. She can't help but cry in front of her husband. She asks him to take her out of prison as soon as possible. Farid is heartbroken to see his wife in a helpless state, but consoles her that he's trying his best. When the meeting time is over, Layal heads back to her cell. Inside the cell, one Israeli inmate named Shulamit gets into an argument with her, and a fight breaks out between the women. The guards stop the fight and take her outside the cell to lock her up in an isolated chamber. The isolated chamber is dark and quite small. Layal's condition worsens, and soon she is taken for medical assistance. In the clinic, the doctor gives Layal the news of her pregnancy. The doctor congratulates her and asks the jailer to take care of her health, as she's expecting. The jailer then shifts her to another cell where the inmates are all Palestinians. There's Sana, Jamila, Rian, Fida, Ali, and Ziva. Sana is a former freedom activist and seems to have a bad temper. They welcome her kindly and treat her with care. A few days later, Layal is summoned by the jailer again. The jailer offers her proposal again, but Layal sticks to her denial. Meanwhile, the guards enter their cell for a routine search. They find some letters under a bed, and we come to know they were written by Jamila. One of the guards slaps Jamila and proceeds to take her to an isolation chamber. Layal returns to her cell in the middle of this, and Sana doubts Layal for sneaking information from the cell. Sana tries threatening her using a broken piece of glass. The other women in the cell stop them, and in the confrontation, Layal ends up cutting her hands with glass. She then goes to the clinic to get treatment, and another day passes. The next morning, we see Layal looking out a window. She notices new prisoners brought into the prison with blindfolds. She is then visited by her mother and lawyer. Layal sheds a tear when she sees her mother there. Meanwhile, her lawyer informs her that she has forwarded Layal's case to the court, and she's hopeful about getting her out of prison soon. Layal feels a bit relaxed after hearing this. In the next scene, we see Layal sitting in the court in front of a military judge. A young boy is brought to the courtroom, and the judge asks Layal if he's the person who asked her for help at gunpoint. After looking at his face, Layal tells the court that he's not the boy. Hearing this, the judge releases the young boy but sentences Layal to 8 years of prison time. This breaks her heart. After some days, we see Layal's husband visiting her at the prison. He tells her that he's shifting to Canada for now and asks her not to give birth to the child. Inside the prison, Layal gets furious about this and leaves in tears. Over time, Layal gets close to her cellmates. One night, she shares her story with the women. She tells them how she lived a normal life before ending up in prison for false accusations. She was a normal school teacher, and she and her husband were soon planning to shift to Canada for a better life, but everything changed in an instant. Her cellmates sympathize with her and console her. After a few days, the women receive some letters from their family, and Layal reads them out for them. Then we come to know that one of her cellmates, Ali, has 2 grandsons who are locked up in the men's prison next to their prison, and inmates, Jamila and Fida, are 2 sisters who are in love with them. They plan on getting married to them after they get out of prison one day. Next, we see Layal's lawyer bringing books for her to read, but the jailer denies letting the books inside the prison. Over the next few months, Layal spends her days along with her inmates, performing their daily chores. One day, while the group was washing their clothes, Layal saw Shulamit, the Israeli inmate she fought with previously. Shulamit is in a very bad condition, and seeing this, Layal rushes her to the clinic, saving her life. Next, we see Layal going through labor, and later she gives birth to a baby boy whom she names Noor, which means divine light in Arabic. When she goes back to her cell with her baby in hand, she is congratulated by other inmates for having the child. Her Palestinian friends welcome the newborn baby with joy and take good care of the mother and child over the next few months. Noor gets sick one day, and Layal takes him to the clinic out of worry. There she meets Shulamit, who asks Layal to forgive her for her behavior before and thanks her for saving her life. Layal then leaves after fetching the medicines for her child. Next, we see the Palestinian inmates celebrating Noor's first birthday by preparing a makeshift birthday cake. They also give the child a ball they made themselves out of old clothes. In the next scene, we see the inmates having their dinner with the news of war running on the TV. In the news, it is being reported that many innocent lives were lost after the Israeli army attacked South Lebanon. The Palestinian inmates are deeply affected by the news. Sana stands up to raise her voice, but the jailer arrives and turns the TV off. She then proceeds to assault Sana. The next day, the Palestinian inmates decide to launch a hunger strike when the jailer asks them to get out of their cells and do the daily chores. Because of this, the Israeli inmates are forced to do the daily chores alone. One day, when Shulamit is cleaning up the jailer's room, she picks up a newspaper from the desk while the jailer is busy watching the TV. She then gives the newspaper to the Palestinian inmates. Sana reads the newspaper and is informed about the death of her family members by the Israeli army. She cries her heart out and shouts in rage. The jailer reaches the scene to silence her. Then we see the jailer taking Layal and Noor to another cell to prevent her from joining the strike. She threatens Layal of taking her child away and locks her up there. Noor is terrified by this and cries. Layal consoles her and hands him the wooden toy plane that Noor loves playing with. Noor falls asleep with the toy in hand, while Layal is looking outside the window. We then see the toy changing to a small bird, conveying the deep urge for freedom. Next, we see Shulamit sneaking in food for Layal. She tells Layal that she is being released and she is there to say goodbye. Layal wishes her luck for the future, and the two ladies bid each other farewell. The jailer then brings Rihan to Layal's cell, who is secretly working with the guards. She tells Layal that she is not being allowed to meet her family members because of joining the strike. She doesn't want to continue with the strike and tries to convince Layal to leave the strike along with her. Farid pays Layal a visit after 2 years, and he is happy to see his son. Layal is furious at him as he has never contacted her in the last 2 years. He apologizes and tells her she loves him, but Layal walks away in silence. Then we see the jailer taking Noor away from Layal, and she cries desperately to have her child back. She lost the only ray of light she had with her all this time, in the darkness of the prison. The inmates are now preparing for a large-scale revolt inside the prison. The jailer gets a hint in the air and she heads down along with other guards. They gather the inmates in the courtyard where a fight breaks out. Jamila attacks Rihan for working with the guards, but the chaos gets silenced within a moment after a gunshot is heard. A guard fired a bullet from above in Jamila's life. The inmates are left in shock after witnessing Jamila's lifeless body falling to the ground. This only enrages the inmates further, and a full-scale rebellion starts. The condition worsens, and the jailer is forced to call in for extra assistance. She orders the soldiers to throw tear gas at the inmates that leaves them unconscious. Then we see Ayman, an imprisoned Palestinian doctor working in the clinic, hand Layal a note while she is recovering. Later, when she reads the note, it says he has fallen for her after meeting her and taking care of her inside the prison as a doctor, and he'll be waiting for her forever. We then see that the jailer's action of using tear gas on the inmates upset the higher authorities, and she is suspended from her post. It is also announced that older inmates of the prison will be released at once. This delights the Palestinian inmates, and everyone is getting ready to be released. But Layal is not included in the list, and she has to see her friends getting out. Despite having to stay back, she is happy for her friends and bids them farewell with joy. Time passes, and she's the only one of her friends left in the prison. She continues to get along with the new inmates and teaches them, fulfilling her role as a teacher even behind bars. Finally, 8 years pass by, and it's time for her to get released. After 3,000 nights of darkness, she finally sees light as she runs towards her son to embrace him after years of separation. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe the Explanation Pro for more interesting contents like this.